The story begins with Samir Wassan, an aspiring stand-up comedian who dreams of making it big. One night, at Eddie's Comedy Club, he performs a set filled with dark, politically inspired jokes, but the crowd barely reacts. Instead of laughs, he gets uncomfortable silence, with a few polite chuckles here and there. Later, the club's headliner, D.D. Scott, mocks his performance in a playful but biting way. Samir defends himself, insisting that if comedy doesn't make people think, it doesn't matter. The two briefly discuss another comic, Joe Donner, who is infamous for accidentally killing 2 people in a drunk driving accident. Despite this, D.D. claims Joe is still funnier than Samir, leaving him visibly frustrated. Later that night, Samir notices a legendary comic, J.C. Wheeler, sitting at the bar. Overcome with excitement, he approaches Wheeler and asks for advice. J.C. admits he watched Samir's set, but he's unimpressed. When Samir jokes that he'd sell his dog for good advice, J.C. chuckles and tells him that was funnier than his entire act. Then Wheeler shares a key piece of wisdom. Audiences don't care about what you think, they care about you. He encourages Samir to get personal and put himself out there, warning that when you connect with the audience, that connection becomes theirs, and once it's gone forever. Samir, however, insists he's happy with his life as it is. Taking JC's advice to heart, Samir returns to the stage that same night. After his political jokes bomb again, he switches gears, telling silly jokes about his dog. To his surprise, the crowd loves it. Energized by their laughter, Samir finishes his set feeling like he's finally made progress. But when he gets home to tell his girlfriend Rena about his success, something strange happens. Half asleep, Rena doesn't seem to know what he's talking about when he mentions their dog. In fact, she insists they never had dog. Confused and unsettled, Samir brushes it off and goes to bed. The next day, Samir puts up missing posters for his dog, still clinging to the idea that his dog was real. That night, he performs another set, again relying on his usual political jokes. But the audience, distracted and glued to their phones, doesn't respond. Even his nephew Devin, who's there to support him, looks bored. Frustrated, Samir calls out Devin mid-set and starts joking about him instead. The crowd erupts into laughter. It's his best reaction yet. But when Samir calls for applause for Devin, he realizes something horrifying. His nephew is gone. No one remembers Devin, not even Samir's girlfriend or family. His phone is mysteriously wiped of Devin's number, and even his existence seems to have been erased. It dawns on Samir that JC's advice came with a strange power. Whenever Samir jokes about someone and says their name on stage, they disappear. Panicked, Samir confides in Rena, but she doesn't believe him. Instead, she encourages him to embrace whatever is working for his comedy. Hesitant but desperate for success, Samir decides to test his theory. During his next performance, he targets Joe Donner, cracking dark jokes about Joe's infamous accident. Samir delivers a biting set that leaves the audience in hysterics. As the crowd cheers, Samir says, "Give it up for Joe Donner," and Joe vanishes. Later, Samir discovers that the bus stop Joe had crashed into is now restored, and the mother and child he killed are alive. At first, Samir feels a twisted sense of accomplishment. His jokes can literally change reality. With this newfound power, Samir grows more ambitious. He starts digging up names of people who wronged him in the past, bullies, rivals, anyone he feels the world would be better off without. One by one, he turns them into punchlines, erasing them from existence. His popularity skyrockets, and Rena is thrilled to see him succeed. But as Samir's career takes off, his relationship with Rena begins to crack. At one point, Samir jokes about David Kendall, Rena's former mentor, whom Samir resents. This erasure has unforeseen consequences. With David gone, Rena's career never took off, leaving her stuck in a dead-end job as a waitress. Furious, Rena accuses Samir of being selfish and using everyone in his life as material for his comedy. Samir finally confesses the truth about his power, but Rena refuses to listen. Heartbroken, she leaves him. The cracks in Samir's life deepen. At a comedy show where a talent scout is in the audience, Samir struggles to perform. When 2 wealthy hecklers start mocking him, he retaliates by getting their names and turning them into jokes. They vanish, but instead of feeling triumphant, Samir feels uneasy. Backstage, DD confronts him, frustrated by his sudden rise to fame. At that moment, J.C. Wheeler reappears, reminding Samir that he warned him about the cost of putting himself out there. Wheeler encourages him to finish the job, pushing him to keep using his power. Samir takes the stage one last time, and his performance spirals into chaos. Naming anyone and everyone he can think of, he erases his family, his friends, and even DD. The audience is in hysterics, cheering him on as he destroys his life one joke at a time. But when Rena interrupts the set, revealing Samir's notebook of names, she forces him to confront what he's become. She challenges him to joke about himself. At first, he hesitates, but finally, he confesses his deepest insecurities, that he only became a comedian because he wanted people to think he mattered. The audience laughs, and Samir utters his own name, disappearing from the stage. The crowd erupts in applause as the mic drops onto an empty floor. After the show, everything resets. Rena and Devon are back, and they leave the club as if nothing ever happened. DD, now the club's rising star, notices J.C. Wheeler at the bar. She approaches him for advice, just as Samir once did. The final shot lingers on Samir's face, now immortalized on the club's mural, a grim reminder of J.C. Wheeler's mysterious curse.